It changed everything. It changed how you kept a team together, if you could keep a team together.
Get someone else, James. Get someone else.
It certainly made the game faster.
He's on his way.
People say, Herschel, you shouldn't be that fast.
The game has changed. I'm not so sure that it's changed for the better.
Number 3.
792, plus in 2 weeks.
Nothing has changed.
Ain't nothing changed.
Ain't nothing changed. Ain't nothing changed.
The game ain't changed. It's still football.
Actually, fellas, the game has changed quite a bit since the NFL started back in 1920.
Change right, 22 Seattle on one.
I think there's a lot of things that have changed the game.
To keep things simple, we've defined a thing as, well, anything.
I think players change the game. I think coaches change the game.
What the hell's going on out here?
I think style changes the game.
I got to tell you, Mike, I think the changing the uniforms helped you guys out too, though.
Hey? And while our criteria covers a broad range of topics, we were up to the challenge. After further review, we cut our list down to just a top 10.
I'm sorry we had to do it this early, but it's just a numbers game.
We kick off our countdown with a kicker.
The number 10 thing that changed the game, Pete Gogolak.
Pete Gogolak was an underappreciated pioneer. He did change the kicking game forever.
Pete Gogolak revolutionized the NFL kickers because he's the first soccer-style kicker.
Today, we accept that every team needs a soccer-style kicker who looks as if he belongs in a boy band rather than shoulder pads.
What's that? What are y'all talking about?
But in 1964, the idea was as radical as the Beatles' hair.
You can go as far back as you want. Kickers were offensive linemen. They played another position. He created an avenue for just being a kicker.
Our number 10 thing that changed the game caused a kicking revolution and was a result of a real-world revolution in Hungary, which forced the Gogolak family to immigrate to the U.S. Here, young Pete discovered American football.
The reason I played, because all the cool kids played the game, and all the girls they were dating, they were dating football players. So I said, hey, listen, I can try this game. Then I'd watch some of the professional games, guys like Lou Groza. The first time I saw him kick, I said, what a funny way to kick a ball.
Did I ever try the soccer style? No. I was afraid I'd break my leg or something.
In 1964, Gogolak was signed by the Buffalo Bills, and his side-winding style was an epiphany to the rest of the football world.
I couldn't believe a guy 135 pounds could kick the football that far. See, you can get a lot more velocity with your legs sideways than you can straight forward, and that equals distance.
Nobody ever wanted to kick a ball straight on anymore. Once you saw Gogolak kick a ball soccer style, it was just cool.
He opened the door for a lot of soccer-style kickers from that era.
Yarrow Yepremian never saw a professional football game until this year.
These sidewinders were a new breed of football players who were nothing like football players at all.
Jetzt möchte ich den einen von der Zeitung hören, der gesagt hat, ich kann nicht mehr schießen als 40.
When I picked up Yarrow Yepremian, the first field goal he kicked for me, he wanted to high-five me, and he said, I kick a touchdown, I kick a touchdown.
I kick a touchdown. They always seem like their elevator didn't go to the top floor.
From the start, kickers have been counted on for an annual showcase of bloops and blunders.
Kick is blocked, rolling loose on the field. It is picked up by Yarrow. He fires the full pass.
And Grammatical is dancing up in the air, and it looks like he hurt his knee.
But for all their quirks, soccer-style kickers changed the game. In the 1950 championship, Lou Groza became Mr. Clutch, hitting a dramatic 16-yard field goal to win it. 50 years later, Adam Vinatieri took that title when he kicked a 45-yarder soccer style in a blizzard.
Kick up on the way, and it did go.
The soccer-style kicking changed the game to the point they had to move the goalposts back.
I should have patented this kick. So everybody after me, every time somebody goes in and kick, you give me a quarter, at least a quarter. This is kind of a go-like style.
Lombardi.
Coming up,
a certain magic still lingers in the very name.
Some filmmakers turn NFL action into art. It wouldn't be right to have a top 10 list of things that changed the game and not mention Lawrence Taylor. In fact, it might be downright painful.
It didn't take long for offenses to know that you better control 56 if you want to be successful.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
He changed the way the game was played on offense. They had to do something different.
Son, y'all got to do better than this.
Joe Gibbs had to design a blocking scheme for Lawrence Taylor.
One of the things, we went to a one-back, we took a tight end and just put him on the line of scrimmage right in front of Lawrence Taylor. Great football players, they change their strategy. In this case, Lawrence Taylor helped us come up with a one-back offense.
While LT altered offenses, it was an offense that made our list of things that changed the game.
The number 9 thing that changed the game. The West Coast offense.
I don't know what the true label of West Coast offense is, but I do know it's a very successful system that has won championships.
The Vince Lombardi Trophy is coming home. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, baby! Boom, boom, boom!
Well known for a history of winning championships, the origins of football's most famous offense aren't quite as familiar.
The seeds of the West Coast offense were planted in Cincinnati by Bill Walsh to create a passing game that was an extension of the running game.
We were an expansion team, and we couldn't run the ball because we didn't have near the depth of offensive linemen or the talent in running backs.
Holy smoke, Bill. We keep trying that same darn thing, and we keep getting knocked in our trap every time.
If you think about it, the West Coast offense was born out of a guy, Bill Walsh, who did it in Cincinnati. So it should be the Midwest Coast offense.
Successful in Cincinnati, our number 9 thing didn't achieve game-changing notoriety until Walsh was hired as the head coach of the 49ers in 1979.
Before he got there, football was smash mouth. Football was coming off the ball and it was beating people up. If you didn't do that, that wasn't really football.
You want to keep going and catch the ball on the run. That's what you'd like to do.
Totally changed football because the West Coast offense took the theory that you need the run to set up the pass and said, well, do you need the run to set up the pass or can the short pass set up the pass?
Next thing we've got, a little more of a passing situation, is a sprint right option.
It seemed against the basic principles of football, but Bill Walsh was a forward-thinking enough guy that he understood the direction the league was taking, and this was the way to go.
Sprint option. He's going to break up and break into the corner. Okay, you got it?
A lot of people at the time, when we were giving them fits, call it a nickel and dime offense.
Throwing under pressure, throws his pass, caught by Clark. Clark got a touchdown.
Pretty soon, those nickels and dimes became the coin of the realm.
Touchdown 49ers. We're just a West Coast finesse team trying to get into some identity. Just looking for some identity.
As the West Coast offense became more accepted and celebrated, that identity began to change. Walsh's coaching disciples were in high demand and made their own contributions to the system.
Okay, go zebra. Zebra 20. Zebra right. Zebra choice.
Like a lot of ideas that were basically good, the West Coast has just been absorbed by everybody else to the extent that it hardly even exists anymore.
I don't know that anybody runs the pure West Coast offense anymore, but I don't know of anybody that doesn't run some element of it.
The West Coast offense over time has changed a lot from what it was, and it's taken on a lot of different shapes. But the basic principles of timing routes, quick throws, and receivers that can get yards after the catch, that still remains in place.
What Bill did has stood the test of time, and that to me is the lasting proof of how good that system is.
The number 8 thing that changed the game.
Coming now, buddy. We on our horses.
NFL film.
How does NFL Films impact the way we see football? I'm telling this to NFL Films. That's no big deal.
It starts with a whistle and ends with a gun. 60 minutes of close-in action from kickoff to touchdown.
Fans take NFL films for granted. It's like we take our wives for granted. The wives take the husbands for granted.
Hey, baby! We're going to be here all day, baby!
When something's been so good for so long, it's human nature. We take it for granted.
This is what football used to look like on TV. But that was before Steve Sable and a group of hungry filmmakers took the field and turned it into something different.
This tough, dirty, gritty, mean sport was glamorized almost as if you were putting out a motion picture every week, and you see the dirt flying, and you see the sweat, and you see the expression on the faces. It made it an art form.
A tight spiral taking up the center of the screen. I never know how the NFL Films photographers just get that football, just slowly pull out, and it winds up nestling in the hands of some receiver for a touchdown.
When you watch network broadcasts today, the influence of NFL Films' cinematic techniques are easy to see.
This was a fastball. Look at this baby come in here.
And not just the video, but the sound. To listen to Vince Lombardi's voice.
What the hell's going on out here?
Could he have been anything else but a coach with a voice like that?
It brought us right to the sidelines, right to the huddles.
Just keep matriculating the ball down the field, boys. It's ours to win. It's our time now.
NFL Films made you a part of what was going on in the field.
Thank you.
Throw in a symphony of classic original music, and you have the formula for our number 8 thing that changed the game.
I'm a big hockey fan. I like hockey better than football, which I'm sure is going to get edited out of this interview. But NHL fans never have a complete record to look back at. NFL Films has given us something to watch, to relive.
He died inside the 5-yard line.
I think the impact that NFL Films has had in that regard has been invaluable for football fans.
40 men together can't lose. Okay.
You know, back before they had VCRs and stuff, if you didn't have it at NFL Films, you never saw that play again. I think the networks just threw the stuff out. NFL Films had so much to do with the NFL getting to where it is today.
Coming up on Top 10, we'll discover what the space race had to do with changing the game into a track meet of sorts.
Hey, I'm Troy Polamalu.
Before we proceed with our countdown, let's take a look at something that forever changed the face of NFL fandom.
It's a phenomenon known as fantasy football. How does it work? Well, basically, a bunch of football fans get together and hold a draft.
Fifth pick, 6th round. TJ Houshmandzadeh. Yes, lock it up.
I think that fantasy football has been very, very, very good for the game.
Who? What? TJ, who's your mama?
It makes people understand the nuances.
You mean TJ Houshmandzadeh from the Bengals?
Put him on the board. Houshmandzadeh.
How well your draft selections perform in real life on Sunday determines whether your fantasy team is a winner or an also-ran.
All right, 7 big FFL points.
Drew Bennett, you're on my fantasy team, but I'll never start you because you suck.
I mean, not to go off on a tangent here, but fans should be rooting for their team, not for the quarterback from this team, or the wide receiver from that team, and the running back from some other team. If you were good enough to be a GM, you'd be a GM.
The number 7 thing that changed the game. The rule changes of 1978.
Every time the defenses catch up to the offenses, they make it easier for the offenses.
What happened through the 70s and in the mid-70s was you began seeing defense dominating the game, shutting down offenses.
And Pete Rozelle and the other guys in the league office were concerned that the scores were too low. The teams weren't scoring enough touchdowns, that there were too many field goals.
I was on the competition committee, and our mandate from the owners was to open the game up, to make it more exciting. Every year, the National Football League comes up with some rules changes. The changes are designed to add excitement for the fans because they should help open up the passing game and consequently scoring.
While our number 7 thing was welcomed by most teams, one franchise viewed the changes as an affront to their brand of football.
They really was trying to legislate the game to slow the Steelers down, especially on defense.
I think it was a direct result of what that Steel Curtain did. They dominated the 70s. You know, they had to do something to slow those guys down.
The first change the league adopted was to limit the amount of contact between defensive backs and receivers.
Previously, when a receiver would come off the line of scrimmage, defensive backs would come up and take him out of the pass route.
When you got defensive backs that can come up and knock a receiver's head off all the way down the field as long as he kept them in front of him, that made it difficult for a receiver to get loose.
So we liberalized it by putting in the 5-yard rule, that you could only jam a receiver in a 5-yard area. This is an example of a legal chuck by a defensive back on a wide receiver in the 5-yard area. After he got outside of the 5-yard area, you couldn't touch him or it'd be pass interference.
So many great physical cornerbacks now had limitations, and it was like Christmas for wide receivers.
I'm going to cover Harold Carmichael one-on-one under the new rules.
Oh, no. Harold, come back!
Freeing up receivers would have proven useless had the league not taken the next step, which was to ensure better pass protection for quarterbacks.
The linemen used to have their hands in like this.
They were throwing elbows at guys and chest bumping guys, and you couldn't block guys like that.
And so our thought was to liberalize the pass blocking so you could open your hands up and sort of guide the defensive man a little bit. Hands, open or closed, must be inside the blocker's elbows and can be thrust forward to contact an opponent.
Those rule changes along the offensive line, and what the offensive line was allowed to get away with is the biggest change of what happened in the NFL.
From 1970 to 1977, not one quarterback threw more than 30 touchdowns in a season. Since the rules changed, that mark has been eclipsed 39 times.
Snap is to Peyton. Protection stays in. He throws the something.
For Tom Brady, touchdown pass number 50, an NFL record.
When you look at the numbers and what quarterbacks have been able to do, what receivers have done, you can link it back to those rules.
For Randy Moss, touchdown reception number 23, an NFL record.
As much as we had hoped that they would work, the rules worked to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. More big plays, more scoring, more excitement in the game. So that's it. The latest refinements in the game of football.
The number 6 thing that changed the game, AstroTurf.
The Astrodome, the home of the Houston Oilers. A house filled with the sound and splendor of the game.
Dubbed the 8th wonder of the world when it opened in 1965, the Astrodome was a modern marvel. But unlike the ancient hanging gardens of Babylon, the stadium's attempt at horticulture failed.
The grass died. So, what are we going to do? Well, then AstroTurf was invented.
This is our artificial grass, or AstroTurf.
They put it in. It looked great on TV. And everybody had to have AstroTurf because it was durable and didn't require the maintenance.
I think it's great. We played out in Seattle and we ordered a strip of this thing about 2 weeks ago for this game to practice on. It's great. It's great.
I think it's going to be one of the things of the future, and I feel that in the near future, all the National Football League and American League stadiums will have the AstroTurf.
Like a pesky weed, AstroTurf began sprouting up everywhere. By 1996, half of all the NFL stadiums use some form of artificial turf. But even more rapid than its proliferation was how our number 6 thing changed the game.
It certainly made the game faster. And when the game was faster, your skill position players were players that could take control of the game.
People say, Herschel, you shouldn't be that fast.
It changed the game in the way that speed affected everything, because you started looking for faster players, and it made the search for speed the number 1 priority.
While AstroTurf made the game lightning quick, it also dished out a thunderous beating.
It was an awful surface because there was no padding underneath it.
I could not believe grown men of that size played actual tackle football on a surface that hard. That was like painting asphalt green.
Damn, this paint is hard.
What was really bad were there were teams that actually practiced on it, and they had training camp on artificial turf.
AstroTurf gets obviously much warmer than regular grass. But I can remember a game that was 128 degrees 1 foot off the turf, and it burned the bottom of your feet.
Unfortunately, scorched feet weren't the only things that got burned. For others, their turf injuries were much more serious.
Well, AstroTurf changed the landscape of many knees.
They go to Warner on a pitch right.
Oh, Pete, he's hurt. He's hurt.
He's holding that right knee.
He pulled up as he was making his cut, and his leg just went limp on him. Oh, my, you hate to see that.
I haven't ran into any players that would say they enjoyed playing on it. I'm certain it probably shortened my career a year to two.
When you think of AstroTurf, you think of Veterans Stadium. I always remember the Hard Knocks episode.
Unless that gets fixed.
Where Brian Billick could literally put his foot in the seam.
I can't get to the bottom of that one.
While players complained the surface endangered their playing careers, better science ultimately marked AstroTurf for NFL extinction.
What started to turn it was the invention of field turf. The synthetic grass that's made out of rubber pellets, and it's as soft as grass for the most part. It has enough give.
I believe that field turf has been a positive addition to the NFL. If there was a replacement for AstroTurf, field turf has been a great replacement.
Up next,
great idea, making the referees accountable.
We hit rewind on the game's most controversial innovation. No huddle. Before we continue our countdown of the top 10 things that changed the game, let's recap.
Number 10, Pete Gogolak ushers in the era of the quirky kicker.
And he said, I kick a touchdown, I kick a touchdown.
Number 9, the West Coast is now used coast to coast.
It seemed against the basic principles of football.
Number 8, NFL films bring out the grace of the game.
NFL films has been invaluable for football fans.
Number 7, receivers love the 78 rule changes.
It became more of a passing game.
Number 6, AstroTurf is a pain in the for players.
Oh, Pete, he's hurt.
And now, the number 5 thing that changed the game. Instant replay.
You will not believe the replay when you see it.
Anything that adds to more information about the game, fans have loved it since the very beginning.
Now he reacts and he sees it. Now watch right there. Boom!
You know, instant replay where you can see all the nastiness and stuff. I love that. Great idea.
The first time an instant replay was used in a football game was in the 1963 Army-Navy game on a touchdown run by Raleigh Stitchway. It instantly became a staple of sports broadcasts.
Coach, we're going to have a play right now. You can see it on this monitor.
I hope I can see it.
This is slow motion now as Jerry Kramer makes a key block for Bart Starr on this quarterback sneak for the winning touchdown.
Yes.
A super defensive play, but as you will see, Jerry Kramer blows him out of there.
Yeah, that's a fine block, and there's a real good...
It's totally changed the way everyone views watching the game. And I think because football is a type of game where there's time between plays, it was perfect.
With football, you have a stoppage of play. By going back to huddle bing, we can bang some replays in.
And then as a broadcaster, you like to bring your points of view out there and make the fan think a little bit.
The linebackers drop.
That's what sophisticated the game of football is the fact that they could go back and stop it and show it to you, right exactly what was happening.
I want you to watch the penetration in here.
Instant replay makes you feel that you are better off in your home than you are in the stadium.
Great idea, making the referees accountable for horrible calls. I mean, so many games, especially against us.
And there's a collision. It's caught out of the air.
Good little Oakland Raiders that we were caught, we got ruined by officials.
You ever called one on them?
Our number 5 thing that changed the game did start causing problems because the TV audience had a better view of close calls than officials.
Let's see if the feet come down. Now he's got the ball. He does clearly get inside.
The officials do not have the luxury that we enjoy of seeing that instant replay. And now the Oilers are denied a touchdown.
I remember the first time I saw slow motion instant replay where it showed the officials got the call wrong. I was a kid. It was on Monday Night Football. Frank and Dandy tried to cover up for the refs because they're company men, and Howard Cosell was, this is outrageous.
That's absurd. All they got to do is roll a tape.
In 1986, the league did start looking at the tape.
The replay official will be positioned in a sideline replay booth
which will house 2 TV monitors and 2 high-speed VCRs. The replay official will complete his review within a reasonable period of time, probably 15 to 20 seconds.
But the NFL underestimated the time it would take using this high-tech equipment.
The interruptions in a game, you stopped sweating by the time you went back and played the next snap.
Watch, it's not a question.
The other problem was the eye in the sky decided when to call for a challenge, not officials or coaches.
We don't get a replay?
They're looking at it. They automatically look at it.
Seven of you didn't see it! 7 of you!
Replay went away in '93, but problems continued. The final straw was a poor call that cost the Seahawks a playoff spot in 1998.
No part of that ball even close.
In the years that followed, red flags and replay booths ushered in today's more successful challenge system.
I think it's wonderful, and the more technology, the better.
The number 4 thing that changed the game. Paul Brown.
4. If you were looking at clearly the top 5 people to create football as a major American sport, Paul Brown would be on that list of the top 5.
Paul Brown has always been a man ahead of his time. He owned the shrewdest and most active brain that has ever dissected the simple game of pro football.
He was a difference maker. He was a visionary. Well, hell, they named a team after him, for crying out loud. How many other guys have ever had that?
The mighty Cleveland Browns come charging onto the field.
After he left the Browns, then he comes to Cincinnati, creates a new franchise.
Paul Brown is credited with founding 1/16th of the NFL that we know today. But perhaps what isn't common knowledge is how he changed the game.
Paul was as much an innovator as anybody in the history of the league. First one with a face mask, in playbooks, spending the night before the game in a hotel, full-time coaches. I mean, he started all of that.
We were the team that had the messenger guard.
Paul Brown started the messengers, sending guys back and forth to the game and letting the coaches for the first time send the plays. And prior to that, the quarterbacks used to call the plays.
Then he got the idea to put a radio in the quarterback's helmet.
This helmet here was worn by George Ratterman when Paul Brown had a radio receiver inserted into his quarterback's earpiece.
You felt like an idiot with the thing because it was an antenna and you would have to turn like that. So I'd have to stand outside the huddle going like this, you know, until he came in loud and clear.
While advancements like practice squads, team scouting, and film study were derived by design, at least one of Paul Brown's innovations came about by accident.
Otto went back to pass. I think he stumbled on the way back a little bit. Real quick, he just handed it to Marion Motley. And, of course, he went right through.
And all of a sudden, the Browns looked at that and they said, wait a minute, we have a play here.
All right, here we are. I'm going to draw. Leg draw.
And they began refining it and working it, putting it in the playbook, and it became what we now know as the draw play.
With a master's degree in education, Paul Brown used the principles of academia to transform football into a thinking man's game.
Paul Brown put teaching into coaching. He brought the classroom into pro football.
Luke Rosa has a question, and Coach Paul has the answer.
Before that, everything was done on the field. Paul Brown taught you in a classroom atmosphere.
He wanted smart football players, and we took 2 kinds of tests. One was basically an intelligence test, and the other one was a personality test.
Players weren't the only ones who learned at the knee of our number 4 thing that changed the game.
The style that Paul Brown set was a style that was adopted by every coach who came after him.
Vince Lombardi came to our training camp the first couple of years before anybody had ever heard of him and observed what things Paul Brown did.
When you think of the overall organization of a team, how to run a practice, how to run meetings, you know, all the things that still are in vogue today came from Paul Brown.
During an era of racial inequality, Paul Brown also played a key role.
Paul Brown never gave it a thought about assigning black players to the Browns.
I told him at the outset that I didn't care whether they were white, black, yellow. I was after the 35 or 40 best football players.
This was integration of professional sports even before Jackie Robinson broke the color line in baseball. So what Paul Brown did cannot be understated in the history of the game.
He was the single most important person that has brought the quality of football to what it is today in the National Football League.
Coming up on Top 10.
Hey, Frank, good job, man. That's a great...
We'll take a look at something that made it more difficult to keep track of who's who.
Cliff, Coach. That's Cliff.
That's what I said, man.
No, you said Frank.
Relive the best games from...
In the early 1920s, college football was king. But the passing of the scepter began in 1925 when the Chicago Bears signed college superstar Red Grange.
Grange had played for the University of Illinois and was the most famous college football player of his day.
Grange's celebrity packed stadiums from coast to coast, giving a boost to the popularity of the NFL and forever changing the game.
He gave the league validity. He made people want to watch it. That's what he meant to pro football. He gave it a reason to exist.
Grange's signing was also significant in that he chose which team he wanted to play for, a freedom that would become a point of contention in the NFL for the next 67 years.
The number 3 thing that changed the game: free agency.
Back in the day, you'd get with the team, you'd stay with the team, and you'd end up with that team, because there were no free agency. It was slavery.
For players, their emancipation began following the 1987 strike with a limited form of free agency. But it wasn't until 1992 when a court ruling gave players the right to unrestricted free agency.
There's no question the movement of the players, what started as Plan B, has changed the game dramatically.
Used to be you could identify a pro team with a player. When I would turn on a television set and I would see Reggie White, that was Philadelphia Eagles. And when Reggie White went to Green Bay, I mean, all the circuits just blew.
Players celebrated their newfound freedom by closing lucrative deals with teams willing to open their wallets.
Are you mad about the money?
No, I'm not mad about the money at all.
I think player movement has been good for the game. Quite naturally, I fought very hard to try to make sure that we achieved it, but I also believe that it's helped a lot of teams.
Before free agency, the draft was considered the best way to build a winner. Our number 3 thing that changed the game put that process on speed dial.
Teams can get better much more quickly in the free agency era. You can identify specific spots and fill those spots with accomplished players.
Our team wouldn't be where it is without guys that came to us as free agents.
What it's done is it's given a lot of teams hope, and a lot of fans hope every year that their team can be the one to turn it around.
Roster makeovers were easier with free agency, but the salary cap, a system which put a ceiling on club payrolls, seemed to put revolving doors in team locker rooms.
It changed everything. It changed how you kept a team together, if you could keep a team together.
It's a bit of a transitory nature of the game now, that there's a constant changeover in personnel.
I'm sorry we had to do it this early, but it's just a numbers game.
Free agency has given the NFL a little bit of a nomadic feel, and I think that has hurt the league to a degree. Teams isn't as good, not as much depth, a lot of guys you haven't heard of, a lot of moving around. It's the way it is.
In college, every year you graduate a fourth-year team and you recruit a new group. Basically, that's what's happening in the NFL now. Through free agency, probably every team goes into a new season with 15, 18 new players, probably about 1/4 of their team.
While free agency increased player turnover, it also gave rise to a year-round sport.
Free agency keeps football in the news cycle, 365 days a year.
You have an offense that really needs that one thing, which is Edgerrin James.
I love the offseason in the NFL because there is so much movement, and you're wondering what this team is going to do to help themselves.
In the era of free agency, what you really are rooting for is the uniform. All these guys come and go and fill them out differently, but the one thing that stays is the uniform.
Free agency has to be accepted because that's football today. And I think that fans learn, if you enjoy football, that's another part to enjoy.
Up next.
It's been nothing but a tremendous positive.
Well, let's just say it's not radio.
1 million fans.
The most controversial omission from our list of top 10 things that changed the game is former NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle.
I don't think anybody was more important to the growth of American sports in the 20th century than Pete Rozelle.
He could see what the NFL was, but he clearly had a vision that could be something
even more special.
It was Rozelle who sold the league to America through a little invention called television.
The number 2 thing that changed the game. Television.
You know, there's been a statistic out there for a long time that only 2% of all football fans actually go to games.
Most of the other 98% camp out comfortably at home, while a plethora of electronic gizmos bring the game to them.
It gets ratings, it's bulletproof, it's on Sunday afternoons in the wintertime, in the fall.
Namath has not been bashful this week. He has said that the Jets are going to win. He doesn't even predict it. He said, I guarantee.
The game fits perfectly on the screen.
People love the violence. They love the competitive nature.
Kellen Winslow being helped off the field.
They love to see guys do things that they can't do.
If you did not like this football game, then you didn't like football.
Wisconsin took the kickoff and carried the ball to their own 22-yard line.
Prior to TV, fans had heard dramatic finishes on the radio. But after they actually got to see the first ever televised sudden death overtime finish, the world would never be the same.
In my estimation, Pete Rozelle deserves a ton of credit.
Rozelle devised the idea of revenue sharing, which ensured both large and small market teams would prosper on TV, so long as they got their uniforms up to the new codes.
The game had to make some adjustments to make it television friendly. By 61, all the teams were wearing nameplates on the back of their jersey. That was done primarily for fan benefits. You didn't have to have the program in front of you.
In the late 60s, Rozelle had another idea.
They wanted the opportunity to go to prime time.
We wanted to expand our television coverage.
ABC needed some shows. They were running third.
So I thought that Monday night might be feasible.
When? You know, I mean, when? Monday night.
Pete not only believed it worked, but he believed that Monday Night Football would take the NFL to that next level.
Monday Night Football brought in extra cameras, which delivered new angles on the action. It ushered in celebrity guests and pioneered the madcap announcing team.
City Chiefs and blue collars.
I was never so proud of myself. Primetime television, Phil Villapiano, actually.
Monday night. It's Monday night, baby.
It elevated the players to another level. It elevated the audience to another level. And the whole world was watching.
It just convinced people that sports was something more than a Saturday and Sunday afternoon programming phenomenon. Once this made it, it was onward Christian soldiers. Let's have a real big life in professional sports.
Another innovation in how we follow the game was the first live lead-in show, the NFL Today. It blended hardcore football news with off-the-field pieces, courtesy of former Miss America, Phyllis George.
She would go down and do great interviews with people like Roger Staubach.
You know, I enjoy sex as much as Joe Namath. Only I do it with one girl, you know?
And then Jimmy the Greek.
Atlanta's got to win it. It's a must-win situation, and they might win it by a field goal.
Television took it from a sport to basically a way of life.
Great idea, TV.
These days, we even heard that there's a whole network dedicated just to the NFL.
You can't put enough NFL football on TV. It's America's sport today.
Coming up,
it was 10 years of us versus them.
Find out why a bitter war tops our list of things that changed the game. Before we reveal our number one thing that changed the game, let's recap numbers 10 through 2.
Number 10, straight-ahead kickers get kicked to the curb by Pete Gogolak and his soccer style. It was just cool. Number 9, Walsh's wisdom sparks an offensive revolution.
Very good.
Bill Walsh changed the way offensive coordinators attack defense.
Number 8, lights, camera, action. NFL Films makes movie magic.
NFL Films made you a part of what was going on in the field.
Number 7, the league cracks down on roughhousing DBs.
So we liberalized it by putting in the 5-yard rule.
Number 6, AstroTurf comes and goes, but scorches its legacy on the game.
It certainly made the game faster.
Number 5, instant replay makes us all experts.
That's what sophisticated the game of football.
Number 4. Paul Brown stands alone as the game's greatest innovator.
Well, hell, they named a team after him, for crying out loud.
Number 3.
You can identify specific spots and fill those spots with accomplished players.
Free agency is far from free, but gives every team a chance. Number 2. TV turns football into a fan favorite.
The future of this game was going to be on television.
And now, the number 1 thing that changed the game. The AFL-NFL war.
There was a sort of a disdain.
We didn't think much of them.
I am the National Football League, and you're not.
It was 10 years of us versus them.
We were destroying each other. We had to do something about it.
In 1960, the American Football League hit the national scene with all the subtlety of a circus act and challenged the NFL's lock on pro football fans.
It was really kind of the media in the beginning. They portrayed it as an inferior league, but it had brilliant young talent. It had brilliant new coaches with new philosophies like Hank Stram and Sid Gilman.
I don't think the NFL really took them seriously. You have to think about that. Here's Lamar Hunt, the founder of the league, is all of 27 years old.
For the first time in, I guess, 10 years, they have a choice of where they can go play.
All along, you had the competition for draft picks that was simply driving up the cost of doing business in the NFL, and this created some ill will between the two leagues, and it snowballed from there.
And then, and this is a little bit more nefarious, what they would also do is the weekend before the draft, invite the player out to dinner and more or less kidnap him, essentially trying to keep that player away from the AFL representative.
Which brings us back to our number 10 thing that changed the game, Pete Gogolak.
Back in the old country, they said, if you do well, you can ask for it. You can't be ashamed to ask for a raise. But the Bills wouldn't give it to me. So I became a free agent, and the Giants signed me. I didn't realize that this really created a war between the two leagues.
That was the first case of the NFL rating an AFL team for a player.
They were rating our quarterbacks, they were rating our stars, and we were going back and rating theirs. The bitterness was bad. It was growing by the day.
I did meet with Joe Foss, the commissioner of the new American Football League, in an attempt to develop an overall policy of cooperation and harmony.
And then along came Namath. He gets the $400,000 contract, $400,000 at that time, which is crazy.
If the teams in both leagues kept spending the amount of money they were spending on players, that franchises were going to go under.
And that ultimately was a decisive factor. There would be teams in both leagues that would suffer greatly if there were not a merger.
Who does this panel think won the war? I feel that's a league matter.
There was in Los Angeles Coliseum today enough pageantry and color for a coronation.
We decided that the first thing we did to implement the merger was to do the Super Bowl on California.
The Packers of the NFL won the first 2 Super Bowls, but the tally was tied 2-2 after 4.
The game is over. The New York Jets are the world champions. They have upset the Baltimore Colts.
That's pretty fantastic. It's a beautiful trophy, and it really is a satisfying conclusion to the 10 years of the American Football League.
It's one of those great ideas that has lasted the test of time, and it's only grown greater as it's gone on.
It's become sort of an American fair. People who don't know a football from a hockey puck will watch the Super Bowl.
It's ironic that our number 1 thing that changed the game was a bitter war, but from it came the NFL's greatest innovation.
This afternoon, we're going to play the biggest football game in the history of Western civilization.
The merger of the two leagues had very much to do with football being the favorite sport in America.
On any list, there will be things some feel have been overlooked.
You better put it on there. I'm going to tell you right now.
Oversights only the dimmest of bulbs could fail to see.
Hash marks definitely changed the game.
But with apologies to Mr. Sayers, hash marks will have to wait for a sequel, because that's all the time we have for this list of top 10 things that changed the game.